Hello, everyone, and welcome to Help Desk Live, episode 30. My name is Jen Sheffer. I am the Instructional Technology Specialist here at Burlington High School and facilitator of the Help Desk program. And joining me today, making his co-hosting debut, is one of my students, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself.
My name is Don Boermeester. I'm a senior in the BHS Help Desk program. So here to
Donnie's going to introduce our guest today, who has some pretty strong ties to the Burlington community. So he's going to go ahead and introduce our guest.
So our guest is Andy Marcinek. He was like the creator of the BHS Help Desk. So he is now in Washington, D.C. He's a former English teacher. And he transitioned into an instructional technology specialist at BHS. He's a technology director in both Groton, Dunstable, and Grafton, Massachusetts, and currently at the Office of EdTech's Open Education Advisor. Thank you, Andy, for being here.
You have quite the bio that he had to go through. So thanks for being here with us today, Andy.
Thank you both, and it's nice to be back in Burlington, if only virtually. It was a great place for me to work, and I'm happy to see the help desk continuing on greatly. We follow it pretty closely down here at the Office of EdTech, and we're big fans of what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I know that. When you were here, you and Dennis started to explore the creation of curating digital content and transitioning from textbooks to more teacher-created content from various sources. So my thought was, now that you're in this role, working at a national level, it would be great to have you on here and to talk about the initiative that is going on in Washington and really nationwide. So Donnie has, we're going to go back and forth here a little bit between student and teacher questions. So Donnie is going to hit you up with the first question, and we'll just get started with the interview.
Great.
So, could you give us a definition of open education resources and tell us when you did tell us when you first got interested in the concept of OER?
Yeah, so I'll start with the definition, and basically what I like to use the term openly licensed educational resources, and basically what they are, they're learning materials that can be used for teaching, learning, and assessment without cost. They can be modified and redistributed without violating copyright laws. Essentially, the license, in place of a copyright license, what we're encouraging teachers to use and districts to use when they're creating resources or developing resources that are openly licensed is to use Creative Commons, which allows for works to be to have a license that's less restrictive than a copyrighted license. So this allows teachers to the most liberal license, and the one we like to see a lot of is CC BY license, which allows teachers to create resources, share resources, and then teachers in other districts can use those resources. They can modify and adapt them to their own scope and sequence, however they decide to use those. It's also a big part of assistive technologies as well, in which you can, with high quality digital resources, you can personalize resources to fit the needs of your students based on accommodations, or maybe there's a language barrier that would allow the teachers to modify those works that would otherwise be held down by copyright. So we're really trying to get districts to think about this. OER open educational resources have been around for a while, and you start to see them more prevalently being used in higher ed, and so we're trying to really move that and shift that into the pre-K-12 environment to really get districts to think about and look at the review process of their current instructional materials and how they use them. and to think about, how many districts out there, when we talk about, a lot of what we talk about from the Department of Education is around equity. And so what we're looking at is, how many districts, that will have to purchase the textbooks that are very expensive. How many of them have to sit with a textbook that may have outdated material for several years until that cycles up? How many districts out there, or how many kids out there are opening up a textbook today, a science textbook that has Pluto as a planet? And so those are some of the things we want to do, is give kids across the board access to high quality resources that gives school districts local control over those materials. And how I got into this is actually started when I came to Burlington, and I had the pleasure of working, with Eric Conti and Patrick Larkin and Dennis Villano and Bob Kuna and John Allegretto, and what we had done there is we had talked. It was kind of my first 2 weeks on the job, and we had talked about this concept of open resources. And what came of that was Eric wanted to connect and collaborate with a variety of superintendents and districts, and saying, there's no reason we can't be sharing resources across district lines. Why are we working in isolations in our classrooms in our school districts, and why can't we be sharing great resources if they're out there? When you think about how the internet was created and how the internet evolved, that's really the foundation of it, in the sense that we're all consumers, but we're also all contributors to what the internet is. And so we want to kind of think about the same concept for educational resources, and essentially get a shared culture of teachers sharing resources across district lines. And so what we tried to do is we created an event called the Massachusetts Digital Publication Collaborative, and it went on for several years. And I think when we were launching the iPad initiative at the high school in 2011, we really saw an opportunity for leveraging this device in a way that could really impact student learning from day one, and that was access to resources, giving teachers creative autonomy over the resources. They weren't tied to a single textbook, but also resources that you can adapt and share through this device with an iPad. Now, that's not to say that the iPad is the only tool for this type of resource. The technology has grown exponentially since. So it's ultimately about the equity and access of resources, and access to the highest quality resources that we really want students to have.
Great. My entire teaching career, I stayed away from a textbook, so I completely buy into the concept of OER. From a student perspective, I don't think textbooks are really the most engaging instructional tool you can use in the classroom. So I'm a huge supporter, and have been doing a lot of that curation myself as a former marketing and business management teacher. Our next question, you just mentioned quite a few advantages of OER. Free, definitely, is a big one. So what do you think are some of the challenges that teachers face when it comes to getting on the OER bandwagon, or adopting that mindset that, I want to create my own content, my own instructional materials, and then allow people to remix or share them the way I choose? What are some of the challenges you think that are facing teachers?
I think up front and initially, one of the biggest challenges is time and access to professional learning opportunities around really good curriculum development, curation, and discovery of resources. I think it's something that should be built into districts when they're thinking about strategic plans and they're thinking about reviewing instructional materials. They should also start thinking about how they could use open resources that are out there as well. Another challenge, I think, is some of the infrastructure pieces as well. And really, we're trying to, with the President's Connect Ed initiative that was announced about 2 years ago, that set some pretty lofty goals that are being met, in the sense that we want to connect more schools with high capacity broadband. We want to bring in more devices that are equitable for students across the board. We want to have access to more professional development around those resources and those devices, and access to high quality digital materials that teachers can use. And so that's one of the things that we want to make sure that, you know, if schools are using technology, and it's not so much, it's mentioned in the National Educational Technology Plan, it's not so much about the digital divide, but about the digital use divide, and how students have access to these devices, and how they're actually using them in the classroom to impact and expand their learning opportunities. So, and I think teachers really just need they need the time, and school districts need to give teachers time to connect and collaborate, work together, to look at resources that are out there, and to develop ways in which they can use and share them, not only within their teams or within their departments, but with across district lines and across state lines as well.
Yeah, I know that, you know, we do that with this curriculum here in the help desk. You know, I've been sharing the resources, the syllabus, and the curriculum literally globally. So, you know, and people take bits and pieces of this program, of, you know, Corinne Kelly's program, of Jonathan Warner's program, and, you know, create something that's totally unique to their learning environment and their student needs. And, you know, that that collaboration, like you said, not just within your building, but you can literally have global collaboration. I think it's so powerful, and ultimately serves kids really well. And so Donnie has the next question for you regarding, you know, in terms of, I know that you have been working with schools throughout the nation, and some of your colleagues as well. So Donnie kind of wanted to know if you've gotten any feedback from students. So he's gonna ask that next question.
So how are students reacting to the teachers' use of OER versus the textbook?
That's a really good question, and it's something right now that we don't really have a metric on, aside from some examples from what districts are doing. And I'll use an example that we used when we were on the Secretary's bus tour in Williamsfield, Illinois, back on September 15th. And we visited a school that replaced, they decided that they were going to, they had to purchase a new math textbook, and they decided to look at other options instead of getting back into another contracted textbook cycle that usually lasts between 5 to 6 years. And instead of purchasing a textbook, they decided to reappropriate that money within their district budget and support technology improvements and upgrade infrastructure. And they used the superintendent gave the teachers time to work together to curate and discover resources. They used some resources from Engage New York. They used some stuff from Khan Academy. They used the scope and sequence from the Dana Center down in Texas. And so they were able to really build organically and piece together this math curriculum. And as a result of investing in technology in the schools, the students had more opportunities and access to a world beyond Williamsfield, Illinois. And if you don't know much about Williamsfield, Illinois, it's a very small rural school just north of Peoria, Illinois. And it's a town of about 600 people, which is, I think, probably about the size of one class in Burlington, roughly, or maybe 2 class sizes. And there's 100 students in the school, so it's a very small school. And so what happened was the students had these resources now and had access, and they were competing in a STEM challenge, and they were able to see that there was a problem in one of their neighboring communities that had a tornado a few years ago, and really took out the power grid for several days. They did some research and they did some analysis on their town and looked at and saying that the majority of their community members were elderly and really couldn't have too many days without electricity in their house, or there'd be like really bad emergencies and hospitals would be overloaded, and it would be very tough. So what they did was they saw a real world problem, and they developed a microgrid alternate energy solution for the town that they presented at their STEM challenge. And as a result of having access to these resources and the technology that was there, they weren't just looking for this in a textbook between the parameters of page 1 and page whatever. They were able to, you know, look at resources that were dynamic, that were out there, that were openly licensed, that their teachers were helping them find and facilitate their learning process. And they built this solution, and they presented it right in front of Secretary Duncan when we were out there, and we were all very impressed with this. And you know, they're actually trying to get it incorporated into the town's safety and security systems, so that it will eventually help their community if they ever have a tornado. So that's it's a small example from a small town, but it shows what impact can happen when you really open up beyond a textbook and really look at resources in a way in which you break down the walls of your school, and you can learn about the world and learn and access you know, beyond Burlington and beyond wherever you are.
That's a fantastic story, and I think it's what kids like Donnie want out of education. They want their learning to be real, you know, and that's why I love this help desk structure here, and students in this program and similar programs are never going to walk away saying, well, I'm never going to use that ever again. You know, they're solving real problems, their experiences are authentic, and there's really no reason why this kind of model can't expand into every content area. I mean, I think you would agree that kids really want learning to be relevant and purposeful, and they can kind of see through it, you know. They can kind of play school, if you will, and, you know, they know how to leverage technology and find the answers to their own questions. So to have the opportunity to impact their community is, I think, something that kids are, you know, really want. Like here in Burlington, we had students that, you know, created, I'm sure you heard the story about the 8th graders that created the prosthetic hand for one of the classmates. I mean, that is what education needs to be about. That's what learning needs to be about. You know, Donnie's done some real world things with our makerspace. And, you know, these are all experiences they can share, that when we talk about career and college ready, I mean, those are the kinds of experiences that they need. And, you know, your emphasis on digital access is huge. I feel fortunate every day that we can come here in Burlington. We have that infrastructure. So that's great advice, obviously, for school leaders to put, you know, your network and your infrastructure needs to be ironclad and should be a huge priority. So Donnie has a question regarding some of the promotion of the OER effort via Twitter. He wanted to find out a little bit more about that. So I was going to ask you. So
where should a teacher start if he or she wants to build curriculum using OER?
And we also wanted to know regarding the use of Twitter to leverage the Go Open effort with OER. How can people get involved with that? So it's kind of like a two-part question.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the where should teachers start, and it really starts from, I think, from, you know, this like Jen had just mentioned, from school leaders really understanding what this is about, thinking about it from, you know, principals, curriculum leaders, assistant superintendents, all the way up to superintendents, and thinking about how they want to, you know, when they're thinking about bringing in instructional materials, whether it's new science textbooks or kits, or new math textbooks, to really think about what could we do if we didn't spend that money, or how could we reappropriate that money to provide access similar to how they did what they did in Williamsfield. And there are a lot of resources out there at the moment. You know, tools like OER Commons have a lot of resources out there, and a lot of great you know, materials for teachers to begin looking through. We also had announcements on October 29th, and this goes into our Go Open announcements, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But what we announced on the October 29th was commitments from tool providers such as Microsoft, Amazon, and Edmodo to build out new tools for curation and discovery of openly licensed educational resources. So the common thread, and I'm going to get a little nerdy and wonky here for a second, but the common thread that binds all these tool providers together is what's called the Learning Registry. And the Learning Registry is a joint effort between the Department of Defense and the Department of Education. And what it is it's a card catalog of metadata. And so metadata is simply the tagging schema or structure that allows these resources to be accessed. So a lot of times the learning registry gets misinterpreted for it's where we're hosting resources, and it's actually just metadata. So it's like when you go into a card catalog in a library, which I know probably Ms. Schiffer and I are the only ones that have probably done this in this call. That's essentially what a metadata is and what the learning registry does. So Amazon, Microsoft, and Edmodo are all building out tools that will now search, and they're building on top of the learning registry so that no matter what tool you're looking in, you'll have access to openly published metadata that will be that can be accessed whether you're in Amazon or Edmodo. So it doesn't really matter what tool you select. And we're hoping to get have more tool providers that to come on board as well. So that's essentially what we're trying to move forward, because one of the things we discovered early on in this movement is that a lot of the tools weren't there yet. They weren't where they could be. There were a lot of scattered OER out there, and the idea of teachers going to Google and trying to search for terms is not how you should be searching for open educational resources. So the tools are coming. They're being built. Edmodo's tool, Edmodo's Spotlight, is actually live now. Teachers can access it. Microsoft's tool called Docs.com is live and can be accessed as well. Amazon's tool will be arriving shortly in early January. So it's exciting to see these tools coming about. I also encourage, I think a good place for teachers to start as well is Creative Commons, and really understanding what Creative Commons licensing is, what you can do with your own work, and how you can share and adapt others' works with giving attribution to the creator. So that's I think a good place to start. And then as far as the other announcement we made on the 29th of October at the White House was the Go Open movement, and this movement is a commitment from school districts. And so what we're trying to do is get districts to commit to replacing at least one static traditional textbook with OER, with openly licensed educational resources by next year. So what that means is we're working with districts along with Creative Commons and ASCD to support districts, to support the planning process. We have districts now developing what we're calling Go Open teams within their district, and that allows them to begin to strategize on how they're going to, or where their entry point's going to be, and also how they're going to scale this up beyond that initial textbook. And any help as far as looking at how you can support Go Open through Twitter. We do have our hashtag. Make sure you capitalize the second O, or else it would look like Goopin. So that was something we struggled with. So make sure that O is capital to have our Go Open hashtag. And then it's been great to watch and share stories of districts who are going open, who have replaced textbooks or are looking to do that. Also within the higher ed community as well, there's a lot of work going on with cutting the cost of textbooks in higher ed level, which can be very burdensome on an already burdensome college process with financially. So any ways in which you can share resources or stories about open educational resources, whether it's higher ed or K-12, that's a really good use of the Go Open hashtag.
Yeah, sounds like there's some incredible, exciting things happening. Your mention of Edmodo and Amazon, it sounds like, these are some pretty well-known companies that are obviously focused on education and improving learning for students. So that is exciting to hear and makes me very optimistic. So it's incredible, but we are almost out of time. I know that Donnie wanted to wrap things up with a nice conclusion here, and everyone in Burlington has followed your progress. So it's great to see that, you know, you're taking your passion for teaching and learning and, you know, spreading that and working hard to, you know, serve kids. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep following up. And, you know, I'm excited that here in Burlington, I know I've talked with several colleagues who I think are going to make that commitment. They're really focused on doing away with the textbook. You mentioned earlier how you know, they're pretty outdated as soon as they're printed. So I think we're, you know, continuing to build upon what you and Dennis started back, you know, 5 years ago. So there's no finish line, like Dennis says, you know, and it's great that there's going to be additional tools and additional professional learning opportunities for educators. So thank you very much for that commitment. And
yeah.
Don,
And I just like to say too, you know, thank you guys for having me on this. I mean, I love the fact that there's so much student voice that's amplified at Burlington Public Schools throughout K-12, and that's an exciting thing for us to hear, because, you know, I you know, go to work every day to try and help make your education the best it can be. And a lot of my colleagues do the same thing. So, you know, please keep asking us questions and talk to us and really, you know, amplify your voice, because Burlington has a great opportunity to do that. And it'll really, you know, you can make a difference, and you can help make change. So we want to hear from students. We want to hear from teachers. We want to hear from everybody on how we can really do this. And because, you know, we don't have all the right answers, and we want to make sure we move forward in the right direction. So please continue to use your voice and amplify it through various social media outlets.
We definitely will. And I'm pretty proud of Donnie. This is his first time serving as a co-host and a facilitator. So learning the technical side of a hangout, a live broadcast, and, you know, just juggling all the different components of this. You know, it's pretty nerve-wracking for an adult, let alone, you know, a high school student. So, you know, with a couple more episodes, and then he'll be doing these interviews solo. I hope that's my hope. But
I was nervous the whole time. My hand was shaking. That's why I didn't bring it into screen. I usually talk with my hands, but I didn't.
You did a great job.
You did a great job, Donnie. Awesome work.
So he wanted to wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks again, Andy, for taking time to talk with us. And thanks to the Help Desk Live audience for tuning in.
And you can catch all of our episodes. I can't believe we've done, this is episode 30. This was a crazy idea I had 2 years ago, and we failed miserably several times until we finally went live. I was persistent and determined to make it happen. So it's pretty exciting that we've done 30 episodes. If anybody's watching and would like to be a guest on a future episode in 2016, don't hesitate to contact me. You can reach out to me on Twitter, or on our blog, bhshelpdesk.com. So we had 4 live viewers, so thank you all for watching. And again, thank you, Andy. I really appreciate you being here, and have a happy holiday and a happy new year.
Thank you. You do the same. Take care.
Bye-bye.